Well, hello and welcome to PM Personality Profile. My name is Nana Sakwal IV, and today we have a very, very exciting personality that we're going to talk to. We're talking to Girmay Haile, who is the UNAIDS country director. This man came into this country 5 years ago and has become a Ghanaian. You meet him at functions, you meet him at events, and he's concerned himself with all things Ghanaian. And now it's about time that he ships off to Zimbabwe to continue his work. Indeed, he's done a good job when it comes to HIV, creating the awareness and reducing the stigma. But wouldn't it be nice if we just get to know where it is he came from, how he came into the UN, and how he found himself in Ghana? We always know their glory, but not their story. And that's what we're going to find today. What's the story of Girmay Haile, the UNAIDS country director? Don't move, it's going to be exciting. Well, thank you very much for staying. And, finally, I get to sit down and have a chat with a man that I can comfortably say is a friend. We've met on so many occasions, even though he has almost forgiven me for not inviting him to my wedding. Almost forgiven me. Maybe by the end of this interview, I may have a full forgiveness, but I'm still looking forward to that. But I'm here to have a chat with this man who indeed has become a statesman by de facto. I think he's become a Ghanaian, as I said in the intro. Any important gathering, he sacrifices his time and makes sure his presence is there. And indeed, apart from concerning himself with the betterment of Ghana, has not neglected the reasons for which he was here, making sure HIV, is minimized and the stigma of HIV lowered or probably gone. And indeed, today, when they talk about HIV, you don't see the skeleton anymore. So he's played a good role. My good friend Girmay Haile, who is a UNAIDS country director. Girmay, thank you very much. I know you're almost at the end of your service here in Ghana, but they say better late than never. Mm-hmm. So I'm here to have a chat before you go. I should have been here ages ago, but I'm here. Mm-hmm. So let me say welcome, and thank you for giving us the time. But I just want to change the narrative. I know, you're here for, HIV and education and prevention and everything. But since we have an hour to talk, I want to go all the way back to Addis, where I believe you were born in Addis.
Yes,
What year are we talking about?
Oh, that is long enough to forget.
And, parents, siblings?
Yes, I have we're 7 siblings in my family.
Okay.
My father was an army officer in the Ethiopian army.
Okay.
He rose to the rank of lieutenant general, and he was the chief of staff of the armed forces at the time when the coup d'etat took place in Ethiopia in 1990s.
Haile Selassie's
Haile Selassie's time, Emperor Haile Selassie's time. And my mother was also there at the time, passed away about 5 years ago in the United States after about 30-something years of exile.
Siblings, boys, girls, all boys?
Yeah, we are 3 boys and 4 girls, and tough girls, very tough girls, yes.
What did mom do? That is a general role?
Yeah, my mom was into nursing at the beginning, and then after a while, when she started to have lots of children, and also in those days, the work that my dad did, we moved around a lot from place to place. So therefore, she became a philanthropist. She became a motivator and leader of several associations. So she didn't continue in her nursing profession as she started, but she ended up being a very public person.
Oh, okay. And what was growing up like? Good fun growing up, or dad was too strict, or what was growing up like?
Mom was strict.
So
but
is the
Dad,
case, isn't it?
yeah.
You think because he's a soldier, we always blame the soldier.
But Dad was a very practical person, very outspoken, always to the point, very few words, but also very academic as well.
Okay.
Very much into knowledge harvesting, very much into analysis, very much into debates, and whenever he's around.
No wonder you love Ghana.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I really, you're right. I really find the Ghanaian community to be very intellectually driven as well. I also love the way they believe in education and they push. And the best thing I love about the Ghanaian community also is when they're pushing their children into education, they don't have any gender discrimination, and that is probably the best part of it all. When you look at many countries, especially the places like Ethiopia, and where I come from originally, Eritrea, the struggle for women to really find a place is always there, especially in the region. But here, it seems that culturally also it is very much an integrated mentality, and I really have enjoyed that in Ghana very much.
I think it's something that we need to hold. But going back to you, growing up, was it like a fun that you recollect a lot of fun growing up, or was one of those things I think, look, I really don't want to go back there?
Well, it's a mixture for me. When the coup d'etat took place in Ethiopia in 1973, I was just in my mid-teens. So I think up to that point, life was fantastic. We traveled to many places. We had really exciting.
And the general comes with a lot of goodies.
And yes, and we also lived in that military environment, which was quite high class in those days. But right after the coup d'etat, then things completely changed, especially for my family. My father was killed along with the 60 top officials of Emperor Haile Selassie's government in a massacre on 23rd of November 1973. And after he got killed, then because of the Marxist orientation of Mengistu Haile Mariam and his people, they imprisoned all the Emperor Haile Selassie's family, the children, the princesses, the princes, and also the wives and children of those 60 officials, the ministers and generals at that time. My father was the chief of staff of the armed forces of Ethiopia at that time. And so he was part of that group. So as a result, my mother was imprisoned for 9 years.
9 years?
Yes, older brother was imprisoned for 7 years, and then another sister also for 4 years, and I myself also for 2 years. And life had never been the same since, in as much as the family situation is concerned. But what happened was, for the rest of my siblings, and also later my mom and my brother, after they left prison, they all moved out of Ethiopia, except my older brother, who stayed in prison for 7 years, stayed on.
Which number are you amongst the siblings?
I'm the fifth.
The fifth, okay.
Yes. Below me there are two twins, a boy and a girl. But I decided, okay, I'm not going to run away. I'm not going to go and be a refugee anywhere. That's me. Yeah. I am a fighter. And so I said, no, I'm going.
You don't come across as a fighter. You look like the gentle soul.
I know. Life has smoothened me out now. But I left Ethiopia and went to Eritrea, where I come from originally, and joined the Eritrean People's Liberation Movement. This is an independence a group fighting for independence of Eritrea. So I joined that group. So I have been, I suppose, very political and a very strong patriot since my mid-teens. So I really never had much time for fun after that. It was around-the-clock kind of life and work.
So you're mixing school and all this?
Yes, I went at the end of my high school. As I joined the university, that was the year I left and went to Eritrea. So I didn't have that continuity of education. until Eritrea became independent in 1991.
Oh.
And then that's when now I said, okay, I need to go back to school. Luckily, when I was going back to school in England, they have a system where they look at your experience. And then somehow, if you are academically conversant with who you are or what you do, they have the system where they accelerate you directly to a postgraduate level of education. So that's what happened. So I went to Lancaster University, got my master's, and then I was the first one from the veterans after independence who went to school, back to school. And then after that, it just became a big trend. So the entire government, all the ministers went back to school as well.
I see.
So once I finished my master's, I came back, went back to Eritrea. I was already in the government and established the Ministry of Tourism and also helped establish the Ministry of Social Welfare and Labor. You know, we're a new government, we're starting at that time.
How difficult was that?
It was very difficult. After 30 years of war, so much destruction, and completely wiped out system of anything and everything. But the good thing was, since the war was taking place on the Eritrean land, Eritreans who stayed behind to keep working in the civil service, to stay in the cities, really guarded the archives and they guarded the documentation centers. They made sure that no fire, no bombing, no whatever destroyed anything. So in as much as that part is concerned, we did recover a lot. And as you know, the Eritrean history is very much associated with its immediate past, which was the Italian colony. And it is a place where the Italians never came to colonize, but they came to stay. So they really built it up in the way they really want to and it looks like Little Italy when you look at the cities in Eritrea, the architecture, the infrastructure. It's a very efficient city even today. So for us to start all over again, create a new government system, train our civil service, get things moving, get a budget going, get a new economy started, it was quite a daunting experience. But it was probably the once in a lifetime experience that one will get at the time of independence to up to 10, 15 years. You must be lucky to be there to see those things happening in life. And maybe that's why I appreciate a lot when I come to Ghana. What many Ghanaians complain about, I say, well, I wish we had a tenth of that back home, because the system maturity in Ghana, the fact that you have law and order, the fact that you have institutions, if things come to, push the shove, whatever, you have something to fall back on. That is what is very difficult to build, and that is what we have learned.
So when you're setting up, it means you're setting up your legal system and everything?
Everything.
Whoa.
Everything. Education,
Draw
legal system, constitution, everything from scratch. I was very much involved in the education and human resource development aspect of the work. I was with the Ministry of Education. I was also advising at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and so on. So mine was always to develop people, to train people, to create curriculum, and so on. So we wrote our educational curriculum from starting first grade all the way to high school ourselves. And that is what we still have now, and of course it has improved a lot now, and we're beginning to see also quite a lot of results today. But the challenge was there, and it didn't matter what your educational background or professional background was. You did whatever it is that you have to do where you are at that moment in time. So in my experience, starting from during those years of liberation. Like I said, I was very much involved in education even there. So we had established an education system. I worked as a war correspondent. I was a journalist, and I trained a cadre of journalists as well. And then we established the radio station. So I was very much involved in the English language production of both the radio station and all the publications. And then from there, I went to social welfare and looked into issues of displaced people, young children, orphans, and so on. So we had to come up with systems to support that. And I was also involved in emergency response for disaster. that place is very prone to war, and also as a result to famine and hunger. So we had to also deal with that. We didn't have very many supporters. We had to fight our independence war literally on our own. We had to dig into mountains to create hospitals, to create schools, to create place for displaced people to stay. So I did that, and then I moved to education, and we started our liberated zone educational programs and had to start everything again, like I said, from scratch. So it is the many facets of the movement that I was in that eventually, by the time we became independent in 1991 and declared our political independence in 1993 after a UN-sponsored referendum, then establishing the government was really literally upgrading what we had started to do during the war, and give it a state and a more definitive, legally binding structure.
The Eritrean people, because one thing which is everybody likes is change, and one thing everybody hates is to change.
Yes.
So, I mean, the war is over, you're setting up, and I'm just thinking, you would have all these good intention, writing all these laws and putting restrictions in place. How receptive was it?
By the people?
Yes, by
the Eritrean people participated in the struggle from day one. And in fact, in as much as that period was a very difficult period, I think it had built the sense of nationhood, it had built unity, it had built that sense of mission for the Eritrean population. And also, that's where we even got our emancipation about gender issues. We didn't even have any gender issues. Women participated fully. They were 50% of the army. They were 30% of all working forces elsewhere.
50% army were
yes,
women?
Yes.
Whoa.
So it was something that brought the 9 different tribes of Eritrea into one identity. So after that, when we were establishing the state of Eritrea, it was a massive flow of will and participation by the people, and still is like that in Eritrea.
9 tribes to 1 is a major feat.
It's a major feat.
Because otherwise you have a divided nation.
Very much so.
How did the 9 tribes decide to come together? Because every tribe has got a leader. And so when you're bringing them together, it means every leader would have to now submit to some authority.
You see, what happened in Eritrea is, I remember we were about 60, 70 years under colonial occupation of the Italians. And then immediately after the Italians left, the fate of Eritrea was decided at the new United Nations to be federated with Ethiopia under the crown of the emperor. And the emperor did not maintain the federal arrangement, so he quickly annexed Eritrea as one of his provinces in preparation for the Organization of African Union, which included a charter at the very beginning before they signed it, that they say, now as we sign today to establish this organization, we recognize each other's borders as it is today. So before that date came, he made sure that Eritrea was already part of Ethiopia. And that's what happened. The catch about Eritrea for him at that point in time was access to the sea, because Ethiopia is a landlocked country. Okay. Eritrea is holding a very big chunk of the Red Sea on the southern part. And so therefore, these transitions continuously undermined the tribal or the traditional leadership structure in Eritrea. Eritrea has a written language. So we have documented history. We had laws since 750 years ago, written laws. And the society is very well organized society. So that organization nobody could break. But the cultural aspect or the traditional leadership was actually destroyed by the Italians and then maintained by the Ethiopians. And then when we came into independence as a liberation movement, we were also highly enlightened and very left-wing in many of our political views, because it was a popular movement. Traditional leadership had no place in that. So all those pillars that will hold you to your tribal identity really had gone by then. And then the emancipation of women is also the other key thing for Eritrea as well, because women were not discriminated against in any way. You know, when women are left to be themselves, they have a way of unifying even across the fence, across the society, across tribes, that they have that ability. And I think they brought the nation together.
One thing, which is in Africa, one thing you find about Africa is subconsciously or unconsciously, if I may say, we educate ourselves away from ourselves. Mm-hmm. So by the time you finish educating, you're complete European or you're complete American, and you find it hard to come back to be a complete African, because the educational system was set up by some European to turn you into a clerk. He's gone. You're still studying the thing to be a clerk, and everybody wants to sit behind the desk. I mean, how much of that did you pay attention that by the time you leave school in Eritrea, you become even a better Eritrean than you started? That is
the hallmark of the Eritrean situation right now. Like I said, 30 years of independence, war, really forged that unity among people. And the fact that we were not helped by anybody, and the fact that we did not have anybody's intervention, made us create our own identity, made us create our own products, and made us create our own history. So we are the owners of our narrative as history. And that's what we had implanted throughout in everything we did in our media work, in our education curriculum, in our human resource development strategies. It's all nationalized per se. Wow. It is a very strong basis for the current Eritrean identity. And on average, even the few people who are described as the opposition figures to the current government, when it comes to identity, they identify themselves first of all as Eritreans, okay. and they have their own clear issues that they use to identify themselves as Eritreans. So I think we have reached that level of nationhood collectively, and we have moved on. But like you said, in Africa we. Even the way we say, we Africans, is a very colonial statement. Because for us, it's not really we Africans. It is like who we are culturally. There is an unfinished social, cultural development that was stopped at some point, and that gap is continuously creating this, you're an African, I'm an African, but where is the commonality? How do we find? The only thing we find commonality is we look alike. Probably we eat somewhat similar things, but then other than that, our destinies, our histories, our cultures, our identities, they're completely different. But we are trying to create a super image out there that at the tradition level, at the community level, is not a priority for many people. So I think it misplaces our priorities whenever we come through that angle. But if we look at how much have we progressed, say from the various linguistic groups or clans or tribes in Ghana, to having people feeling Ghanaians, is where the real measure should be. Because whether we like it or not, again, even our state borders are artificial borders that don't respect our identity, that don't respect the way communities are placed, geographically, historically, in terms of their trade and interest and grouping. It didn't respect that. No. So that is where things become very difficult. And every time you start to think as states, our beginning is the modern state, not the state you have as a king, for instance, yourself. If we start to think that as a state, then we have a common goal or common desire to create something bigger. It becomes more genuine, it becomes more owned. But right now we are pushed into this narrative that somebody has told us, okay, you're Sub-Saharan Africans, you're black, so you're all Africans. I think we are going on that road, and that's probably one of the biggest problems we have in the Pan-African movement. I'm a Pan-Africanist, but I'm a political Pan-Africanist. I'm politically conscious enough to understand that despite the fact that we are divided into these artificial nations, we should be one people and we should have one destiny. I believe in that. But that's a political belief. It hasn't evolved having its own natural basis. If I go down to anybody in the community and I start to talk about Pan-Africanism, they will look at me, but Master, what is happening here? You know, what have we done? Because the villagers next door are not happy with us. That is the social boundary they're more worried about. They're least worried about any other boundary. So I think we haven't married these concepts enough for us to really move and define ourselves.
So here we are in 1993, you know, you're forming a new government, and one of the challenges on the continent is where government is very alienated, it's very far. So that if somebody was working in a government institution, driving a government car, you fall in a pothole, which if it was in your car, you would have driven by. But this time it's a government car, so bam, bam, let me go. I'm leaving the office, let me leave the lights on, because after all, government is going to pay. But if I'm leaving home, I tell you, because we are a bit, we are unable to own government. What were you putting in your government to make sure that people own it, so that they don't have that attachment that, oh, it's the government building, they'll sort it out?
You know, the first thing that, that separates people in government is the belief that government officials are there to benefit themselves. So we don't have that in Eritrea. That is the first disaster. The second disaster is, as an average citizen, where you pay tax, you have your duties, and you have the soldier on the road telling you which way to go, which way not to go, and so on. And you're a law-abiding citizen. But then you see that you're being pushed out of the road because somebody is coming down the road with the sirens. Then you still, you know, feel that there is some kind of dejection, and there is going to be. Whereas if you go to Eritrea, and this comes from those days of the liberation movement where everybody was equal, there was no privileges, there was no extra access for anyone that is not available for everybody else, or you know, that group of people. We have a president, for instance, now. He's not very much liked by the West because he doesn't conform. So he's usually demonized, but he's very patriotic. So he doesn't steal. There is no bribe that you can get to him. His salary has not changed for the last 25 years. He walks in town, does his own shopping, goes to the hospital on his own, picks his children from school himself, lives in his father's villa. Literally did not create a cult around him. You don't even see pictures of him all over the place. There is no presidential cult. There is no presidential aura around. So that is what it is. Now imagine the president being that. Now all the ministers are going to have very low-key lives. All the other officials in government. So government there is really seen for its role, which is civil service.
And are the people responding to that image?
Yes, I think so. They're responding. You know, despite all that is going on politically right now in Eritrea, I would wonder one day when we wake up and this kind of government is not there, I wonder what we would be like. I wonder what it would feel like. I think it would feel like you know, a lot of let go. I mean, I have spoken to some people here in Ghana, you know, senior people who have seen all the waves that Ghana went through, and what I get from them is, yes, some of those waves were hard, but we had discipline, we had purpose, we had even unity, and they miss that today. So I always wonder what we would be like tomorrow morning.
Is he able to command respect? I mean, the president will go to school, pick your own children up, you know.
Oh, right.
You know, is he able to command respect?
He's very much respected for that. Very much respected for that. And even when he goes out to the communities, to the rural area, he doesn't go like for one day and come back. he goes for several days. He always says that if heads of state can travel abroad for 2-3 weeks, he said, why can't I travel for 2-3 weeks inside the country and visit places? And when he goes, he sleeps in the villagers' homes. He pitches camp just next to them. It's just like that. And people are used to that. And I don't think they would expect any less or any more from him whenever he's around them. But politically, again, because of the...
He's got good control over the country?
No, he's got good control over the country.
Army responds to him?
Yes, very much so, yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of loyalty around him, yes. But again, since he's highly demonized by the Western media...
The story is not known as much as Magufuli, we hear Magufuli did this, Magufuli did that, but this guy is probably, godfather of Magufuli, but we don't hear his story that much.
But you need to tell me, you're the media person, what interests you people?
Exactly, sensation.
Yes, so you probably look for sensational stories, you probably look for quick-selling stories, you probably look for things like that. Our media on the continent still has one serious revolution to undergo, in as much as the legal system on this continent, really to liberate this continent. The media has to be bringing out real stories that we need to start to understand as our own narrative. But right now, maybe it is the style or the education, like you said earlier, the way we're educated to be journalists, or the way we're educated to be communicators. Maybe that's what it is. We still have not shown that ability to bring out a narrative which is our own. And I think this is where the problem is.
I see. Why did they let you leave Eritrea?
Well, I don't know if you remember, but in 1998, a so-called border war broke out between Ethiopia and Eritrea. This is several years after independence of Eritrea. And because of what happened in the 1940s in terms of disposing the Italian colonies on the continent, and how Eritrea, against its will, was given to the emperor, to be under the crown of the emperor. Eritreans have always resented the United Nations. They have always resented the United Nations platform that was wrongly used because of somebody else's interest. We find ourselves in the situation. We had to fight for 30 years to get our independence. It was bloody. We lost many people. Over 50% of our population fled Eritrea, went into exile, and this is what happened to us as a result. So when this war started after independence, then the people said, okay, now maybe it is about time that we start to have some Eritreans in the system. So the UN opened up that opportunity, and I happened to be there. And government said, no, please, you go, and you seem to be the one to quickly adapt to these kind of things, and you have a better understanding of the UN than us, so maybe you can work together with them and us and help us communicate. So it was a temporary thing that I joined the UN for. Here I am until today.
I'm going to take a break, and when I come back, I want to find out, does Haile regret joining the UN, and is he homesick now? Don't go. Well, thank you very much. They always say, you've seen my glory, but you don't know my story. I'm sure many of us have seen, met, Haile in one event or the other, but you never would have thought that this guy was a independent fighter struggling for his nation. And here we are enjoying all these stories. But just before the break, I just wanted to find out from Haile, number one, if you regret going to the UN. Number two, do you miss home?
Well, let me start with the second one. I miss home very much because, like I said, I was so much part of that life and society and community, history, politics, everything. It is one thing that is still very strong in terms of my feelings and identity. So I miss home, but I do get to travel a minimum of every other year, if not every year. Okay. So I'm still in contact with back home. The UN is, I must say, it's a mixed feeling. When working for the UN, it's like working for the army. You're always moving from one place to the other. And in my experience, most of like 95% of my time that I worked with for the UN, I worked in the African continent. And I'm a kind of person that gets very attached to the people and the country I work in. Some come across very strongly like Ghana because of their strong identity and everything. But others also, I don't let it be because they're not coming strong. They're not as embracing immediately. I really reach out and I get attached. And you don't feel the pain until it is time to move. Every time it is time to go, then all of a sudden you realize the depth of the relationship you've had, the kind of quality friendships you have established, the kind of work you have been able to do, because not because you're good or you are nice or you are professional, but the way people have allowed you to achieve, have allowed you to work.
You have been a Ghanaian though. You've been really, genuinely, not professionally or UNly, but I mean like really genuinely part of us.
This is exactly what I meant. For that to happen, your being good is not good enough. For that to happen, people have to embrace you. People have to open the arms for you. People have to open the homes for you. It's really how people embrace you that really matters on how much integrated you become. And you're very right. I mean, not just me, even my family. In fact, my family right now are still resisting the fact that we have to leave Ghana. And they're still trying to say, but why are we leaving Ghana? I mean, this is the best place we have been to. This is the place where we have, felt home, like home. This is the place where we have made friends. And even with you around or not around, we always had these people, there for us. So why are we going? And especially my daughter is saying that this is the first time we have gone anywhere where our 99.9% friends are local people. She says, we have never had this experience before. Elsewhere, we had always had that margin of being an expatriate, of being an outsider, but here it's not like that. She said, there's no place I can feel home like I do here. And she's 25, and she doesn't want to go. So it has really become even a family affair this time.
How about your son?
My son, a 9-year-old son, going to Ghana International School.
Made all these friends.
I mean, just Ghanaian through and through. From the food he likes, to the clothes he likes to wear, to the places he likes to visit, to the way he tells other people, our guests, family guests who come to visit us about Ghana, the way he stands up for Ghana. It's just incredible. It's incredible. I mean, of course, for him, when we came, he was only 4 years old. So his real formative life has really been Ghana. So for him, he does not see any other value. And not only that, also after 5 years, we are moving. This is going to be his first time that he realizes a move that he's making. And he just can't comprehend why we need to move. And I keep trying to explain to him, but that's how my job is. And he said, but you're crazy. How do you get a job like that? I'm going from place to place. It is not right. I mean, okay, you go to place if you don't like it. But if you come to a place where you like it and you're at home, why do you want to move? So that debate is going on.
Ongoing.
And like to answer your question, do I regret working for the UN? It has even come to my family. It has become a question in the family as well. That part I do regret. It is really tough. You move every 3 to 5 years from one place to another place. You make new friends, you find new home, and then all of a sudden you have to move, and it is quite stressful in that sense.
You're off to Zimbabwe from here?
I'm off to Zimbabwe from here, and that is yet another very exciting country. It has a very interesting history as well. I was there for about 3 weeks, about a month ago, and what can I say about Zimbabwe? The thing that really hits you hard when you go to Zimbabwe, when you are in that country, actually everything is not about the president. Nothing is about the president, actually.
Not as the media puts it, if you are.
Nothing. It's just a completely different reality there. I think it is everything to do with the economy. The sanctions are hitting the economy hard. The sanctions are constantly making this country kneel down, has brought it down to its knees. It's a constant live struggle to create and preserve a very strong identity. And we're going to see this unfolding, and it's a very exciting situation. And also from our office point of view, Zimbabwe is one of our biggest offices as well for the HIV and AIDS response.
I was just going to say, what's the HIV situation
in Zimbabwe? Yeah. Zimbabwe, total population of Zimbabwe is about half the size of Ghana, but they have 13% prevalence rate. For them, it's very good because it is down from 20-something that they had a decade ago. So they have made tremendous progress. In terms of the HIV response, they are probably the best leading response so far in terms of achieving high, ambitious targets. They have about 1.2 million people who are HIV positive, and close to 1 million people are on treatment. So that's where the big catch is, and that's where the big success is. And this country has managed to use its own resources, which is basically a highly educated population. The literacy rate in Zimbabwe is among the top in the world. So that I think they have really used to communicate the issue of the response. And also they have been very meticulous in terms of the follow-up. And in as much as they could, as the economy allowed, also they have also been making a lot of input locally through research, through staffing, through all kinds of things. So it is almost a 10 times bigger size, epidemic size than in Ghana. Okay.
What are the statistics in Ghana now?
The statistics in Ghana now, the new statistics is we are around 1.6% prevalence rate. This is the new estimates we have for 2015. In terms of new infections, we are really coming down also in Ghana. Our biggest success is among sex workers and men who have sex with men, where we had very high levels of new infections. That has now come down dramatically. That is probably the biggest contribution into the reduction of new infections. However, in Ghana, we are also seeing a very interesting phenomena. HIV is one of those opportunistic infections where given or allowed to move, it moves very fast within the urban setting. Usually the urban setting is talking about lifestyle, it's talking about standard of living, it's talking about access to all kinds of things. So therefore, if you have noticed, the city dweller is not a very good consumer and user of information. Has access to all kinds of information, but processes just only a few. So as a result, what we see in Ghana is the overall demography of Ghana is that it is becoming more urban population than rural population. So the epidemic is becoming more and more of an urban epidemic. And we are seeing that this stabilized and most likely also slightly increasing new infection rates within the urban community. And this has been my concern. And that's why you see me in a lot of urban-based events and activities where I was trying to really bring this message home, is that on average, any middle-class Ghanaian, any university student, any professional, any working class Ghanaian living in the city is a very low condom user, is a very low desire to know their own HIV status. And in some cases, the lifestyle is also creating this where people have more than one sex partners, increasing by tenfold and over the risk to infection, because imagine you have sexual contact with more than one person and you don't use a condom and you don't know your HIV status and you don't know the other person's HIV status. This is definitely a disaster because you are multiplying your risk unnecessarily by so much. So we have these factors that are continuously fueling the small epidemic. Our aim has always been to quickly arrive to a point where we achieve elimination of mother-to-child HIV transmission, and also achieve the highest level of reduction of new infections. Since I came, we have seen tremendous change in terms of number of people that are on treatment, on HIV, on ART treatment. And this treatment is important because, one, if you're on treatment and you are adhering, then your viral load will diminish, so therefore you will not be infecting others. So this is a quick way of cutting new infections. So the more people who are HIV positive are put on treatment, then the more you're able to reduce new infections. So that way we're estimating that if we get about 214,000 of the 260,000 or so HIV positive people in Ghana on treatment by 2020, then by 2030 we'll completely stop the epidemic, end the epidemic in Ghana. This is also a global target, but in Ghana it's highly, highly possible. As I said to His Excellency the President the other day when we met, all the indicators that we have for HIV in Ghana are all very low-hanging fruit in terms of achievement. We can achieve all of them in Ghana. This is a very small epidemic. The size has to be kept small, and we have to deal with it, vigorously. One of our biggest problems in terms of dealing with the response in Ghana is stigma and discrimination. And the more we stigmatize and discriminate against the high-risk populations, the more underground they become because they're already in conflict with the law. Men who have sex with men, sex workers, are already in conflict with the law. Yeah. And somehow we need to be able to address the law because there's already a discrepancy about the rights of people, sexual orientation in the Constitution and in the Penal Code. Mm-hmm. So the Penal Code criminalizes them, but the Constitution doesn't say anything about that. So when you look at the Constitution, you really see this is an accommodating Constitution. And of course, there is also the level of tolerance that you see as a nature, as a culture in Ghana that allows us to do the programs effectively with these people. Whether Ghana wants to have men who have sex with men legalized in the country, this is really a debate of the society. It's not necessarily a debate for anybody else. Mm-hmm. While the society debates that and comes to a clear understanding, in the meantime, we have to be able to give services to everybody because one is a Ghanaian, one is in the country, and second, we have an epidemic to deal with. And so when you have this epidemic to deal with, you have to go to the darkest corners, anywhere else where you think this is gone underground.
You've done very well with stigma, mm-hmm. because there was upon a time HIV was like,
yes.
Strong with the skeletal, the crossbows, and the description about it. And if you translate it, the HIV animals are in your stomach and they're eating you up. And but now, it's just looked as, another viral infection, yes. Get on treatment, you'll be cool.
I'm very happy to hear somebody like you say that, because when you are in it, you don't see it very much. But when somebody like you who meets people, who talks to people, who is always dealing with issues, sees it like that, it's very good. Because the HIV response today is a response that we are trying to get across to people to understand is a manageable and achievable response. This is what we're trying to do, because in terms of medical technology, in terms of science, in terms of understanding the character of the virus and also the entire epidemic, I think we are at the highest edge. We know exactly what to do. When we started medication almost 30 years ago, we started with a cocktail of something like 24 pills that a person has to take a day.
Whoa.
From there, it came down to 17. From there, it came down to 12. From there, it came down to 9. Then it came down to 3. Now it is down to 1 pill a day. And even this, we're trying to get it to be 1 pill every month, and possibly even 1 pill every 6 months. We're very close to that. Where we have not really seen the end of it in terms of achieving is the vaccine. But even the vaccine, we feel that we are much closer to it than we could ever be at any one time. So that understanding of the science and that ability to develop adequate medical technology and supplies injected into the system, I think we have come to that point. In Ghana, for example, the number of people who die due to AIDS has dramatically come down by over 60%. So out of every 10 people who used to die, say 10, 15 years ago, today we have only 4 people dying. And even that, if we are getting this universal treatment for everybody who's HIV positive, that will stop overnight. That's why I'm saying it's a very low-hanging fruit. Mm-hmm. We don't need to have anybody die anymore. Our biggest challenge right now in terms of identification of who is HIV positive is young children who are born infected already. Mm-hmm. It takes a long time for them to know, and it takes a long time for us also to be able to reach them. That is where the biggest problem is. But if we have solved these and have put everything in place, I think that focus is a very, very easy one to do.
So, Haile, I'm looking at life after UN. I can see you coming into Eritrea, running for the presidential seat. I will come as a campaign manager, the president's friend. That'll be on my business card, the president's friend.
Well, I mean, thank you very much for that. I have another 6-7 years to go before retirement. So I feel that I have still a lot of time to think about what next. But one thing is for certain, that I will go back home, that I will continue to participate in the political life of the country. If I am appointed to anything worthwhile, I will still pick that up. I don't have any presidential ambition. I am now at this point beginning to feel that we should inject this desire in younger people. History is better preserved when you have people contributing at a leadership level at a very good age, so that after that they have a long time also to stay, to narrate history, to document history, and to also be able to operate as councils to performing presidents. So by the time I retire, I think the whole ambition of any kind of that level of leadership should also retire in one person. I believe in that. I'm very much of a youth, pro-youth, for development kind of person. I think we need to change also continentally. We need to change.
Godfather role?
Yes, that kind of a role. Yes,
Yes,
I love diplomacy. So if I find myself a nice situation back home where I'm able to coach diplomats, where I'm able to develop, more on the foreign policy, be able to do more research and write, that will interest me very much. Yeah.
Corporate CEO, you've just been awarded. How does it feel, to be recognized?
Oh my goodness, you have no idea how that feels, because it came out of nowhere. I didn't have wind of it. I did not know it was coming. But it is, again, one of those things that I really appreciate about Ghana. When people want to honor you, when people want to recognize you, it is incredible the way they do it. And this is one of them, and I really feel very honored on that one. Honestly, I just didn't see it coming. Yeah, but it is really
because we were watching you closely, and I think I was late. I should have given you an honorary chief title in Dumasa. You would have even. I should have given you an honorary chief title in Dumasa before you shipped off to Zimbabwe. What are some of the great memories you're going to leave here?
When I first came, I had my father's friend. P.V. Obeng, okay. Honorable P.V. Obeng. So when I told him that I have been appointed to Ghana, he really celebrated. So from the day I arrived, it was a red carpet entry for me. And that sustained itself for the next 5 years. This is what I will remember. how people can be warm and accepting and embracing. I think I do agree with my children that probably this is the first place we have come to where throughout our time we did not even feel outsiders. So that I really would remember very much. And second thing is, I am, like I said, a pro-youth, pro-gender person. And it is really, really great reward and great honor to be able to meet so many strong women, including your wife, who really are leaders in the true sense of it, and who make your stay in this country always worthwhile. It had value. So I appreciate the way Ghana gave me the opportunity to have value in the things I did. And also when I came, another thing that I noticed was there is a huge capital in this country that has not yet adequately been used to the work I want to do on HIV, and this is the advocacy aspect. Mm-hmm. I saw there is a very strong media personality around. I realized there's a very strong entertainment personalities around, and the creative arts people and the cultural leaders. So I made connection with cultural leaders, especially with Queen Mothers Association. I made connection with filmmakers and actors. I made connection with musicians and music managers and the media. And all of them responded in their own elegant way. And that is the thing. Once people accept what you are about, then it just, things flow. So I really will miss Ghana. But I'll make sure that I will not be a stranger. Definitely, this is one place that I'll be coming to visit severally.
You can never be a stranger. And if you haven't bought land yet, you need to come to Dumasa. I'll give you a small land to build your house so that you can have your nice holiday weekend house in Dumasa.
You see, this is also one dilemma I had. Should I buy, or are all these chief friends of mine going to give me land? Should I pick one for myself to get married, or will these chiefs advise me to marry? So all these things I had left it to my chief friends. So
well, all too soon, that's what time will allow us. But Haile, on the behalf of all the many, many Ghanaians who may not have this opportunity to have a one-on-one, all the Ghanaians whom you graced the occasion, however big or small, and I always say that, I get number of invitations, and for one reason or the other I am unable to attend it. However, you must be more selfless than I am, because no matter how small, medium or large, midnight, midday, you always make this time to grace an occasion, which means so much than just sending an envelope with cash, but your presence adds so much to it. And I think that's what we fell in love with, that selfless, that smile, that charm, that look, you invite me, I make the time and I will turn up. And I think that's what made us fall in love with you. And I strongly believe that if you definitely decide to come and settle here, you'll be more than welcome than you were before. So on behalf of everybody, I want to say thank you very much. Thank you so much for being a Ghanaian. And don't fall in love with Zimbabwe, because you need to come back.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Well, folks, until next time we come back, stay tuned. But that's been the man, our favorite man, our newly adopted Ghanaian. Thank you very much for watching.